Okay, so I'm a professional YouTuber and I will tell my viewers to grab something hot to drink because it's winter. Hot beverages are cozy and I actually cannot drink that. This is too hot for me. Hi everyone, my name is Aneta and welcome back to my channel where I make art. As I'm recording this video, the piece I'll be making today is already done. But before we dive into the process, I would like to introduce you to this set, which is the Castle Arts Harmonious collection of colored pencils. What kind of presentation is that? This is my first timer. Castle Arts decided to send me this set for free, so the content is not sponsored by them, but I decided, hey, let's try it out. Now, if you're here just for the unboxing and the process, I will leave you the time codes in the descriptions. But I would like to also provide you with some background story because I had some thoughts and I felt somehow weird about it, but I shouldn't. Hear me out. I actually reached out to Castle Arts team, and that was because I was bombarded by the end of September somewhere by the Castle Arts ads. The range of colors actually caught my eye, and especially this set because it was a little bit different from what we see on the market. This was a set with a completely muted palette. Yeah, so I contacted them and they actually sent me a list with a large range of products to choose from. I was tempted actually to grab a bigger set, but then I thought, I don't need it. I'll stick to my original plans. And I'm sharing this because it's not that I have to, I want to. It's just that 2 videos ago I was talking about how am I going to commit to a no-buy year in 2025? And I actually started that from that video. But here I am showing you new products. So I don't know, it felt weird. Or it's just me. I want to be transparent about this because I still stand by what I said in that video. That said, I'm also working toward turning my passion into something more professional. I want to give it a try. My real job sucks. Anyway, Castle Arts sent me this set with no strings attached, meaning that they didn't tell me what to say or how to make a video. I initially planned to make a piece using only these pencils. However, at some point I needed that extra push. And that's actually totally fine, because that's what this set is intended for, but more on that later. Alright, I think now it's good to drink. The set arrived well packaged and included a few extras such as a color chart and a guide on using the pencils. Interestingly, the pencils in this collection are unique and don't overlap with other sets, making them exclusive to this range. As someone with limited experience in this medium, I found a guide which offers tips on techniques and coloring styles, both informative and engaging. This set sadly doesn't provide any details about the pigments used. From the range of tones, it seems like white or grey pigments were added to create different tints, but I can't confirm whether they're light fast or not. I wanted to push myself by creating a full illustration with them. For years, it never occurred to me that colored pencils could be a professional art tool, but I hope this experience would teach me more about their potential and perhaps even change my perception of them as a serious artistic medium. All in all, for anyone considering starting their journey with this medium, I think this brand would leave a positive impression. During the nearly 20 hours I spent drawing with these pencils, I didn't experience any issues like breakage, even when sharpening. The wood is sturdy and sharpening them was very easy. I also appreciated the removable trays inside the box, especially the elastic bands on the sides. For this piece, I've been inspired by fantasy art with a touch of medieval or early Renaissance style. I love how simple those artworks are. There's usually little perspective and the focus is on one or a few characters, so I decided to make something similar for this project. To plan the composition, I started by sketching a light grid with 4 points of interest. I've been working on improving my composition because I believe if the sketch and composition are strong, the piece will look good, even if the colors don't turn out perfectly. But if the sketch is weak, no amount of color work will save it. That's why I always focus on getting the basics right before moving on to the details. To help me learn more about composition, I've been using Creative Illustration by Andrew Loomis. It's a famous book, especially in the United States, and I find his tips on composition really helpful. If you're interested, I'll leave the details in the description. The book is old, so you might even find some pages with key chapters online. For this piece, I imagined a scene with a lady sitting in a landscape with some ruins and a castle in the background. The Harmonious set has a lot of soft colors, so I thought it would be nice to create some contrast by adding black accents. The problem was that the darkest color in the set is brown, so I had to use a different pencil for the darker details. I chose my Indigo Caran d'Ache colored pencil, but I added that part later in the process. Before starting this piece, I watched a few tutorials on how to use colored pencils. I began with the sky behind the trees, but honestly, I wasn't happy with it right from the start. It felt like going back to the basics, and I hit that dreaded ugly face almost immediately. I think with colored pencils, you really have to push through those rough, awkward stages where the drawing looks far from promising, and it feels like it's not worth continuing. I also read that to remove those white spots left by the paper texture or for simple blending, you can use rubbing alcohol and a Q-tip to blend the pigment. That's what I tried, except I didn't have rubbing alcohol. Instead, I used jojoba oil, which I originally bought for my skincare routine, but hadn't used much. Being a light oil, it worked well enough for blending. If you're in a similar situation, you can try one of those: rubbing alcohol, odorless mineral spirits, or baby oil as alternatives. Next, I move on to the trees in the background, and I struggle to create a deep green effect. The range of greens in this palette is quite limited and muted, so I did my best to blend the available shades to give the illusion of trees. Still, I missed having a strong, vibrant green pencil. I don't even have many greens in my regular set, so I had to work with what was in the Harmonious set I was trying out. After that, I worked on some hills and actually liked how they turned out. I started to understand how to layer the pencils better and how to apply more pressure for a stronger effect. Then I moved onto the castle, and that's where my lack of patience showed. I'm not great with architecture or perspective. I honestly don't enjoy them. Drawing anything architectural feels more like a chore than something fun. Still, I tried my best to create a fantasy-style castle with rounded domes, which I thought suited the mood of the piece better than spiky ones. I added some ruins to help with the perspective, or rather hide the perspective, and went through a few ugly faces again, but I think the result turned out okay. Even so, I wasn't fully happy with it. As you can probably tell, I've been pretty negative about this piece. I know it's not as bad as I'm making it sound, but I'm at a different stage with my art now, and this didn't feel like my best work. Then again, I couldn't expect to be amazing with a medium I'm not very familiar with right away, couldn't I? It's normal to go through a learning curve when trying something new, and mastering any medium takes time. So while I don't think this piece reflects my full potential, I did my best, and that's okay for now. I think I finally relaxed a bit when working on the water. I knew it wouldn't be too complicated, so I added a few layers of light blues and some light yellow to reflect sunlight on the surface. that part was pretty easy. Then I moved on to my character, and that's where I struggled again. While I liked the color scheme, I later realized that the character's pose could have been different, maybe not showing her face at all. Her face was very small in the drawing, which made it hard to color, and I had to start over a few times. Using the Q-tip and oil help erased some of my mistakes so I could try again, but I started to panic a bit as things got messy. For future projects, I think I should focus on the most important parts of the piece first, rather than saving them for later. If her face hadn't worked out, I might have had to scrap the entire project. Luckily, I managed to save it and continued with her dress, which was the most enjoyable part to color. I later felt that a more vibrant pink could have worked better. Also, I tend to love drawing characters with very long legs, especially when they're wearing flowing dresses that create an elegant elven look. In this case, though, it didn't come out as I hoped. It just looked a bit odd. That was my intentional risk I took, but I wasn't thrilled with the result. Finally, I colored these ones, which was the easiest part of the piece. This was when I really noticed the difference in pigments. My Caran d'Ache pencils have much stronger pigmentation compared to the Castle Arts pencils. That said, their harder nibs make them more forgiving and easier to control, so it's harder to make big mistakes. When it comes to these pencils, I'm sure I'll give them plenty of love. Given how subtle and light the colors are, I think these pencils will be ideal for creating sketches in future wet media projects. I wouldn't consider them high-end pencils, but if you're someone looking for a more relaxed hobbyist approach, I think they're a good choice. I'll definitely use them in my sketchbook, especially when I want to use a dry medium instead of watercolors, which I find a bit overwhelming for sketching. Sometimes I like to add color to my sketches without turning it into a whole process like with wet media, where you have to layer, wait for it to dry, and worry about bleeding through the page. As I mentioned at the beginning, it might be a good idea to complement this with more expensive pencils. Once I get the hang of using them, I might expand my set with higher-end pencils in more muted tones. I feel that not all the pencils in the Harmonious set are absolutely necessary. Some of them seem quite similar. I sometimes found myself getting confused by their subtle differences. I'll admit that's partly my own tendency to be a bit messy and forget which pencils I've already used. From a technical standpoint, I'm not disappointed. The pencils have never broken and sharpening them was easy, so overall I think they're a solid option. If you're someone who just wants to try something new, I think you'll benefit from this set. As for my drawing, it's not as bad as I first thought. I imagined it differently in my head, so I'm a little disappointed that it didn't turn out the way I planned, but I like the concept and I like the color palette, so maybe in a year I'll revisit the idea. This time I'll make it digital to have more flexibility with colors I don't have in my set right now. Let me know what you think, and don't worry about me being so hard on myself. The more we draw, the more critical we become of our work, but that's not a negative thing. It helps us understand what we want to improve on for the future, and I think that's an important part of being an artist. Self-critique can be constructive and we shouldn't shy away from it. It's not all that bad. As you can see, I pushed through this project and didn't give up, even though there were many moments when I wanted to start over. Perseverance is a huge part of being an illustrator or artist, and that's something I learned over time and after many failed drawings. Not every piece has to be perfect, we all learn, and not everything we create is a masterpiece. So, I hope you're not too annoyed by what I shared in this video. If you enjoyed it, please like and subscribe. It really helps my channel grow. Thank you so much for your support over the past few months. I really appreciate it. I'll see you in my next video very soon. Take care.